This is Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.
I shudder thinking how the world can be so cruel. I lend my voice to those who can't. It's time we tried, it's time we care, it's time we stand. It starts with a voice.
Welcome to the Special Chronicles Podcast. My name is Daniel Smrokowski. I'm the founder and host of Special Chronicles, an athlete leader of Special Olympics Illinois, and a former Southern Shriver Global Messenger. Our website, specialchronicles.com. To follow Special Chronicles on social, subscribe to our newsletter, find the show notes for this episode and all of the series on specialchronicles.com. This week on the Special Chronicles Podcast Series, a recap of Turin 2025. Excited to welcome a guest that I've known for many years now, and have had friends of his on the program, but now finally having him on the program is Shawn Ferguson, Chief of Global Government Relations at Special Olympics, to talk about the Global Coalition for Inclusion that took place at the Special Olympics World Winter Games in 2025. Welcome, Shawn, finally on Special Chronicles.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. It's so nice to be here. I've been seeing some of my friends and colleagues have gotten the call to join Special Chronicles, and I've been waiting for it. I felt like, it's baseball season, so I feel like, getting a call up from the minor leagues to the major leagues, and here I am.
Yes. It's exciting to have you on, and we'll come back to the Global Coalition for Inclusion in just a quick moment. But I'm now a former Southern Shriver Global Messenger, but the last World Games that my class was at was in Berlin, and I think that was the first time that the Global Coalition for Inclusion took place. So it was exciting to, even though we didn't really know that much about what this event that we were asked to go to, but it was exciting to see it begin. And then I think you were on the Inclusion Revolution Radio podcast, and so I heard a little bit more about that, and now I'm excited to share with our listeners the episode that I just finished recording, that our listeners are going to hear after this one. John, who you heard, his day job at United Airlines is with government relations, so it's similar to your job, except he's at Airlines, and then you're at Special Olympics. So it's kind of neat how both of you kind of have similar jobs.
It really is. Can I say one thing quickly about United Airlines? I know we're going to talk about the Global Coalition for Inclusion, which is basically our international work outside of the United States. But United Airlines have been a huge supporter of our Special Olympics Capitol Hill Day programming. They've supported us the last couple of years, and we're hopeful that they're going to be supporting us in the future, which has been a key to getting our messengers like yourself and others up on Capitol Hill to talk to members of Congress and their staff about what we do together with the U.S. federal government. So I have nothing but huge respect for John and for the United Airlines folks that have done so much to support us. And I know you work with United Airlines, so I fly with them all the time, and so we're huge fans of United Airlines at the Special Olympics Government Relations Department.
Awesome. Yeah, I've seen that. I've never been to a Capitol Hill Day before, but hopefully in the future. And I don't know if you know Amy Dugan from the North America team, but she every It's now, I want to joke, every time that she is flying through Chicago, she always texts me when she's flying through.
I have to start doing that too, because it seems like I'm through Chicago a fair bit.
Yeah. Definitely drop me a text when you're flying through. I only work in the middle of the day, but
Sure.
Obviously not today that we're recording, but you'll definitely have to drop me a text. And so take our listeners back to as a way to introduce yourself to our listeners. How did you first get involved in the Special Olympics movement?
Yeah, so it's really been a great part of my career and my life since I've been with Special Olympics. Come June, I'll have been with Special Olympics International for 10 years. Prior to that, I worked on Capitol Hill. I worked in the United States Senate, the United States House of Representatives. I also worked for the local football team here in Washington that now is called the Washington Commanders. After that, I ended up coming to work for Tim Shriver here at Special Olympics International, working in his office. He led his office for a number of years up until just about the last year or so, when I basically, for a while, I was doing both government relations work and overseeing the work of Tim's office. But with our growing, and we'll speak about it soon, with the global coalition work that's increasingly adding to my work outside of the U.S., I wasn't able to keep on top of both effectively. So I'm now focused solely on government relations. One of the things when I saw that there was an opening with Special Olympics way back when I just applied, I hadn't, to be perfectly honest, been that involved with Special Olympics, but my family, my mother, my grandmother, and my aunt all had taken care of people with disabilities throughout their working careers. So I had a very good upbringing in terms of being exposed to people with intellectual and developmental differences. So when I saw that Special Olympics was hiring, I thought of it as something that made sense for me because I had this exposure, but also in a way to honor my mother and my grandmother and my aunt for all the work they had done all of their working careers, helping people with disabilities. It really felt like the right connection. And so here I am 10 years later, and couldn't have asked for a better part of my career that I hope will go on for a number more years to come.
Awesome. I love it. It's always interesting I have a wide range of guests on the podcast over the past 16, almost 17 years now. But it's always, I know it's amazing to think of the impact that is continuing to make on this program and empowering other Special Olympics athletes to start their own podcast. I mean, we could go off on the impact that podcasting has had, but it's always empowering to hear how both staff like yourself, but also athletes and coaches and volunteers that I've talked to over the almost two decades, which is hard to believe, have a different introduction story to the movement. Yeah. Awesome. So can you start by about the Global Coalition for Inclusion? It was exciting to be at the first Special Olympics Global Coalition for Inclusion in Berlin. Can you start by telling us about what the Global Coalition for Inclusion is, how it came to be, and what are the main goals and objectives?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for the question, Daniel. And thank you for being there at the launch of the Global Coalition in Berlin. I remember when you and your class of Sergeant Shriver Global Messengers were there. It was a great addition to the event. That was the launching point for us. The Global Coalition, to give you a bit further back history of it, really came about. It was kind of the idea of our chairman, Tim Shriver, and also the president and managing director of Special Olympics Europe Eurasia, our colleague David Evangelista. This is something that they had been talking about for a number of years. And you know what really kicked this off was the experience of COVID-19. This was, maybe it was a time when we had a little bit less going on the day-to-day, work of events and whatnot. And it was time for us to reflect on things that were needed, that are bigger picture, bigger projects sort of things. But COVID-19 also was, and one thing that it shined a spotlight on was the situation with the health needs of Special Olympics athletes and people with intellectual disabilities, all in the United States and around the world, but also on isolation, the isolation that a lot of our athletes have felt, isolated from peers their age, kept out of schools or not allowed into schools because of their disabilities. And this is something where during the COVID-19 pandemic, it reminded us that we really, we've done some great things in the United States by bringing our inclusive education through sports programming to over 10,000 schools here. But around the world, we haven't had the progress that we've seen in the United States. And also we need more progress in the US. So Tim and David kind of put together a concept note. This was when I was largely focused on US government relations. Brought it together. We formed kind of a small working team. David Evangelista and I were the co-chairs in the first year. We had to, raise some money to carry out the project. We had to vision what we were going to do, what was the goal, what we were trying to do. So we started out. We had funding generously funded from the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, which is a Greek foundation, but also has a headquarters in New York. SNF came in and said, "We believe in what you're trying to do." What we said to them was, what our goal is to sort of mimic a bit what we're doing in the United States. I mentioned Capitol Hill Day at the start of the podcast. What we want to do is to replicate to scale what we're doing in the U.S. And right now, to start out, we're focused on our inclusive education through sport work. So our unified schools, unified champion schools work. And so what we wanted to do was say to government, go to governments that are not currently supporting their Special Olympics programming and say, at what level could you support bringing our programming into your school? So we had to come up with, case studies, and we had to come up with, reasoning for it. So it takes time to put that all together. David, myself, the other president and managing directors throughout our 7 regions looked at what countries where we had strong Special Olympics programming and a government that we think would be receptive to the idea. So in the first year and a half or so after we started the Global Coalition, we were able to get, I think it was 13 countries on board, which were the countries that were on hand in Berlin, where we had the roundtable. The first founding 13 countries we had in Berlin, which included everyone from China to Mongolia and a few other countries, both large and small, came to Berlin and said, "This is what we're committed to do. We're going to do this. We're going to put in funding for this programming." Special Olympics is going to work with our teachers, work with our ministries of education, work with the administrators in schools to help them create this programming in their country. Fast forward to now, we have just added our 20th country. So since Berlin, we've added another 7. We have 2 more that should be coming online in the next couple of months. And we will be adding what we have committed to, and Daniel committed to this last week in Berlin at the Global Disability Summit. So we're back to Berlin. We made a commitment to grow the Global Coalition to 40 countries by the end of 2028. Our goal is also to get funding in the amount of $20 million plus. We want to reach 150,000 schools, and we want to reach 2 million athletes, both with and without intellectual disabilities, in the course of the next 3 years through 2028. So that's kind of where we came from the very beginning. sort of coming out of COVID, to Berlin, where you were at, to Berlin, where we were at last week, and then to where we want to be in by the end of 2028. So that's kind of the past, present, and the future of the Global Coalition for Inclusion. Awesome. I love that. And one thing that I want to touch on of what you said about reaching more schools, one of the new class in the new class of Southern Tribal Global Messenger, Grace Payne. I don't know if you had a chance to meet Grace. I know who she is. Yeah, Grace is down in New Zealand and is the first SSGM from whole program, which is exciting. But she, I had her on the program last spring, and now I'm having her back on this year as well. But something that she brought up, which I think connects with the work that you're doing with the coalition, is as a Southern Tribal Global Messenger, she wants to bring more unified schools in New Zealand, because I'm sure like what you're finding is there are some countries that the programs are not as big or don't have, and so that's a good connection there where to help you to reach more schools and reach more countries. Have you done any work in New Zealand or any? I was just going to say, I need to give Grace a call because we're going to need a connection there. So Daniel, how we've basically done it is we've worked with the regional offices. So the president and managing director of the regions, at this point in her region, which I believe would be Asia Pacific. Yes. We just are bringing on the first country in that region, which will be the Philippines. I mentioned the two that are coming on. The Philippines will be the first. We're working also with the governments in Australia. And what we're looking to do in Australia is we've decided to not only have national membership in the Global Coalition, but subnational membership, because some countries like Australia, like Canada, a few other places, we've gone to the federal government and they say, well, we like the Global Coalition, we like to support it, but in our country, all of the education programming and decisions are made at the state level or the provincial level. So in Australia, we're going to work with some of the provinces to get them to join the Global Coalition. We hadn't gone to New Zealand yet. They may be the same model where it would be like at the state or provincial level that they handle education. Maybe the federal level, but we're going to work on getting to them as well. I will be talking to our good friend Deepak and the president and managing director in Asia Pacific. I'm going to say, I think we have a connection in New Zealand, and we got to get her to give us the connection, and we can work on the government or the governments of the provinces or states to try to bring them on board. I'm all ears. I'm open to that idea. And the one thing I'd say, the athletes are the key. Having Grace as the connection to the government or to the state or provincial governments, having them be the messengers on this and why this is important is the key. We've seen it here in the U.S. with Capitol Hill Day. We've been seeing it around the world with our Global Coalition. And I'm happy to work with Grace or any other athletes send them my way and I will talk to them and we'll bring them on board for our project. Absolutely, yeah. Always like making make connections. And what I'm sure you've seen in impact from the first coalition in Berlin that I was at, and now moving in to the World Winter Games in Turin, Italy. What was the significance of hosting the coalition's gathering during the Special Olympics World Winter Games in Turin, Italy, and how has the event helped to elevate the mission of the coalition? Yeah, thanks, Daniel. That was a great question. And, Special Olympics Winter Games, World Winter Games, are usually a smaller event and there's less athletes and less participants. So we wanted to have an event focused on the global coalition, but without the number of participants. What we decided to do in Turin was to have more of sort of a workshop sort of convening, where we were able to have we had 2 ministers on hand to talk to the group, and we had ministers from other countries in the audience, talked about what their experience have been with the coalition, what have been the successes, what have been maybe some of the roadblocks or things that haven't gone as well. And we really were able to learn from that, to hear from the ministers that were on hand, to tell us about what their experience have been, as a way to get other ministers that were in Turin thinking about it. And it was really fantastic. We had a great meeting. Obviously, our chairman, Tim Shriver, kicked off the event and was able to speak to, what our successes have been to this point, and also, a call to action to keep people going, keep people on, getting people moving in governments to join the coalition. We also had a great address from Ambassador Coscarellis from the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, again, our primary coalition sponsor. Also from Lions Clubs International Foundation, we're on hand. They're one of our biggest sponsors of the Global Coalition as well. So Turin was kind of like we had a kickoff event in Berlin, and now we're a couple years in, and okay, here's where we're at. We've had success. We're up to 20 countries, but how do we keep it going? And the best way to find out, what's working, what isn't working, it is to hear from ministers who are on the ground in their countries, who are working with our teams to get our programming out to their schools. And it was really fantastic. It was really informative for us as we think about what we're going to be doing now in the next phase of the coalition.
Awesome. I love that. We're going to get into it. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the growth and impact and the focus on inclusion and education that you've talked about. Because if it's free to listen and watch this podcast, but as you know, and it costs money to keep the microphone plugged in, keep the website hosting, audio, video hosting every month. I've been in contact the past few days with our website team, and they are working on moving to a new website, Sovo, and so it's it all costs money. Yeah. So we'll be back after this short break to let you all know that this episode is brought to you by listeners like you. Please join our supporters with a monthly or one-time donation so we can operate our studio, continue our mission of giving respect and voice to people with disabilities. Visit specialchronicles.com/give. That's specialchronicles.com/give. And if you want to access bonus content, you can join now at specialchronicles.com/plus, I believe for $10 a month and up, or any donation if you join now at specialchronicles.com/plus. And as we move we move into Shawn, who our guest today on the Special Chronicles podcast is Shawn Ferguson, the chief of the global government relations at Special Olympics. And as we talk about the growth and impact, the coalition, as you said, is continuing to expand its reach, which it's exciting to hear when a new program is expanding and growing. Just on the episode that I just recorded that our listeners are going to hear next week is with United Airlines, and with how United is hiring Special Olympics athletes like myself as service ambassadors, as employees. It started 5 years ago with 4 of us in Chicago, and is now expanded to other hubs. And that was a program that United didn't know that what was going to happen, and has seen a lot of success and is expanded. And I'm sure the same thing is true with the coalition. You started in Berlin with a few countries and now expanded its reach So with that in mind, can you share some of the key milestones in terms of membership and the global impact it's having on individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you, when we first started out, I'll say I love the idea that Tim Shriver and David Evangelista came up with, but having worked on Capitol Hill, and I've seen different global coalitions and global agreements, treaties, and like the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the SDGs, also UN Sustainable Development Goals. One thing that I've always known from my experiences when I worked in the U.S. government is it's not always easy to get governments to agree to put their name on the line or add their name to some sort of agreement. And I'll be honest, I was a bit nervous starting out. I thought, we had a couple, 2-3 countries that were interested, and it seemed like we hit a point along the way in the lead up to Berlin, when all of a sudden, wow, every other day it seemed like a different country, or every other week or so, a new country said, "Oh, we're interested in this." And a lot of times, what it would take would be, for instance, one country in a region joins on, and then one of their kind of fellow or neighboring countries said, "Oh, well, if they're in, why aren't we in?" For instance, the government of China, the embassy here in Washington said, "We support the Global Coalition. We want to be a part of it, and we want to set our goals as part of the Global Coalition." Once that happened, all of a sudden Mongolia was like, "Oh, we're quite interested in this. This is something that we might want to do." We saw that throughout Africa too. South Africa joined the coalition, and then we've had other countries like Kenya. We have a few countries that are in the pipeline now that are interested. So one of the things that I think really got the coalition moving was you kind of get one country in a region that starts out, and then that starts to build. Other countries go, "Oh, hey, if you're doing that, maybe we should look into doing that." It's kind of like a geopolitical sort of competition sometimes to be involved in these sort of things, and a little competition isn't bad. I was in one country that we've actually spoken about earlier, meeting with a minister who, unfortunately, the government changed and that minister's now gone, so you got to start over again. Said, "Well, what's the United States doing for inclusive education? Your inclusive education program? What's Canada doing? So it gets to be a little bit of a competition where people think, oh, we need to get involved with that. So that's something where I've seen sort of a tipping point happen, where you get like a very critical key nation to say, we're gonna get involved with the global coalition, and then other nations will hear about that. We'll see the press releases, we'll see the photos from the signing agreement, and then all of a sudden we start to get inquiries from them, which has been great. And one of the things that has been very important for me in this process, and I was kind of beating this drum early on, is we have to meet countries where they're at. In the United States, we have, very, very generous funding from the U.S. government for our inclusive education programming, for our UCS program, in the amount of about $36 million a year. One thing we couldn't do is go to other countries and say, we need you to match the U.S. in this. That's just something that isn't possible for a lot of countries. That it isn't possible because of their GDP. We're looking at countries from that sometimes don't have the wealth that countries like the United States or China or Japan or Canada or others may have. So what I wanted to do was to work on a coalition that doesn't say you have to meet this amount, this dollar amount, but if you're willing to be. If a country says we'll put some, as would say in America, skin in the game, we're willing to put some level of financing in to the global coalition, heck, we're going to welcome you with open arms. We have China's goals for the global coalition would equal to about $5 million worth of support when you break it out on per athlete and per school amounts. Probably one of, we have Mongolia is in at about $87,000. Heck, $87,000 may not sound like a lot compared to China or what the U.S. does, but you know what? It has a real profound impact for athletes in Mongolia. And so we're as happy to have Mongolia and other countries that are in at a lower level as we are to have the high level support from obviously the United States, China, other of the top countries throughout the globe. So we're saying to people that want to support us, heck, we're gonna join up, link arms with you, do what we can to increase the number of schools in your country that provide this programming, the number of athletes that are touched by this programming, but we'll meet you where you're at. And, we'll start out at a small level. And what we're going to do is we're going to come in and prove that we are a wise investment. That's why our support from the U.S. government has grown from $500,000 in 1999 to $55.5 million in 2025. We will come in and we will prove our value to your students and to as a partner with your governments in providing these services.
Awesome. So if there's anybody who's listening in, I'm sure I'll fund Grace, Southern Travel Global Messenger from New Zealand will be tuning in, and if there's any other listeners who are listening in and want to get their countries and their governments involved, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you or get in touch with your team?
They can come reach out to me, and I'm happy to provide my contact details. Obviously, you have them, Daniel. So anyone reaches out to your program, you can send them to me. The other way is my team and I have been working very closely with the regional offices. So the president and managing directors of our 7 regions, if they want to go through their local program to the president and managing director of the regional office, that's also a great way to get started. One thing also that I don't want to do is, we sometimes get into a situation where we mandate out things from Washington. Yeah. We don't want to do that. We want to work with the local programs and the regional offices because they know the best. They know, is their program in a position where they can take on this project? Is their government in a position that they can work with our local program and the regional office? So a lot of times where we go next comes to me from the regional offices. They say, this year, I think these 4 or 5 countries are prime targets for expansion from the Global Coalition. So either way, come directly to me here in Washington or to the regional offices or the local programs and they'll come to me that direction. We can go either way.
Awesome. And so for all of you that are listening or watching this episode, if you email feedback@specialchronicles.com, I can forward it on to Shawn and point you all in the right direction. And also in the link in the show notes for this episode, I'm going to include a link to where people can get involved in Special Olympics and find their local program. I think specialolympics.org/act. I think there's a bunch of ways that people can get involved. And so if you're listening and if you're driving or commuting or walking and you don't have time to write down right now, when it's safe to do so, you all can look down in the show notes for this episode and we'll put a link to where people can.
And Daniel, let me mention one thing. If you go to the Special Olympics International website, there's also a page that is all about the Global Coalition for Inclusion. So you can link through to that. That'll give you some contact information. Also, it'll give you some more details on some of the schools that have been reached and some of our case studies and our examples of where we're doing really great work. So if you go through that link, you'll get to a Global Coalition website that will also provide more information.
Awesome. And after we're done recording, if you want to forward me on that link, I'll make sure to include it for our listeners. Was a bunch of government and stakeholders that have helped to make the coalition successful. So how has the coalition been successful in bringing together a diverse range of stakeholders, including governments, and other organizations and civil society and the private sector, and what role has each played in advancing inclusion? Because, I'm sure a lot of our listeners know, Special Olympics is all about the inclusion revolution. Our last question that I'm sure, I think even on the Inclusion Revolution Radio podcast, asked the same last question. They might have taken it from this podcast, but it's all about helping each other. But how has the coalition been successful in bringing these diverse people together?
Well, it's been great. I've been so lucky to have, leadership and mentorship from, our chairman, Timothy Shriver, SOI International Board of Directors Chairman, David Evangelista, our President and Managing Director of Special Olympics Europe, Eurasia, our CEO, Mary Davis. These three individuals have all have worked across the globe, have the connections beyond anything I could even imagine. David brought in the Lions Clubs International Foundation as sponsors of the Global Coalition. So not only have they been helping Special Olympics, my team, help funding our team's work, but they have also provided direct funding to some of the country programs to expand our programming in schools in a select number of countries. Obviously, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, that Tim Shriver has a close relationship with the leadership of that organization. They've brought in, they've funded our work, but also funded specifically work in Greece, obviously, where they are headquartered. They've done amazing work in Greece and other countries around the world that have needed, maybe if the government hasn't been in the position to provide funding, these organizations have been able to provide some of the funding. In addition to them, UNFPA, UNHCR, H&M Move, which is the clothing company, which younger people than I think you or I wear a lot of H&M clothes. I think I've aged out of that, but I know it's very popular in a certain sect. They're one of the newer sponsors of Global Coalition, so helping us get out and get the messaging out. And then the Butner Foundation, which is a European foundation that is also helping us move the Global Coalition forward. So these are the non-governmental supporters of the coalition. Hugely important, and they've done so much to help us get the word out there. Also, like I said, to specifically fund our programming in certain countries. And then you add the governments of the currently 20 coalition members. We have such a diverse, just to give you a feel, Egypt, Greece, Jamaica, Mongolia, Panama, Malta, Kosovo, Trinidad and Tobago, Seychelles, the United Arab Emirates, Ghana, Cyprus. We're kind of, when you talked about a diversity, we really have a diversity of countries. They're from G20 to some of the more developing nations, and then we have the corporate and the philanthropic supporters, from Stavros Niarchos Foundation to H&M Move and UN agencies and everything in between. So I think that we've done a pretty good job of bringing together diverse countries, diverse supporters, which I think is the key. As you know, Daniel, we're so blessed to be in an organization that doesn't keep anyone out. We welcome everyone. I've been welcomed. You've been welcomed. Our families have been welcomed. And that's what we want to do with the Global Coalition. And, it's interesting, some of the countries that we are going to and some of the countries we're looking to go to in the future, there's sometimes global political situations that are hard, where maybe the government of where I'm sitting in doesn't really like what's going on in that country. With Special Olympics, we'll go anywhere. If a country is willing to do something that's going to help our athletes and help people with intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities, help them improve their lives, help break stigma, help get people out of the shadows and out of the, be truly included and not isolated, we'll work with the government. It doesn't mean we have to agree with everything that a government is doing, or maybe a corporation's decisions maybe. But if you're willing to do something, really truly do something to advance the cause of inclusion, we're gonna talk to you, and so that's what we're trying to do with the Global Coalition.
Awesome. I love that. I want to just touch on one brief thing that you said about one of the countries in Abu Dhabi. That was the first World Games that my class of Southern Travel Global Messengers was at. And it was exciting to see the legacy of not just those games, but that country of that instead of using the word disability, using people with determination. And then Dr. Jackie Jodo from the youth and education team, we did an episode on inclusive mindsets, because I think she and Tim wrote a brief together, and I think that also kind of ties in with the coalition, because it's exciting to hear what the Abu Dhabi and what the UAE region is doing as well.
Absolutely. Let me say one thing, if I can, Daniel, about Dr. Jodel, Jackie Jodel, a dear friend of mine and colleague here at SOI. My side of the coalition is basically the political or the government side. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the work that Jackie and her team does. Once we have a country, a government that's decided we're gonna support this programming, it's her and her team and the local program and the regional office are the ones that then go in. They will take that investment that the local government has made and turn it into the programming that we see all across the world. And they've just done a fantastic job. Jackie is supported by Haley Werball, who's done a lot of the work with her, and the rest of the team globally. We've really worked hard to create a strong partnership between the Global Youth Engagement team and our government relations team, which is critical to the success of the Global Coalition. And yeah, we've saw what happened in the UAE. You were there, and your team of Global Sergeant Shriver Global Messengers was crucial to them really changing the way they look at disability. And they've been a model. They really have been a model. Jackie and her team work with the Global Center that is now headquartered in Abu Dhabi. Prior to the games, they were going to build special schools for people with intellectual disabilities to go to. Once they learned about Special Olympics and our programming, they decided, no, we need to have inclusive schools, change the terminology, as you mentioned, to people of determination. I mean, gosh, what an example, huh? And that's what we want to see all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that are listening in, if you want to go and hear Dr. Jackie Jodo talk more about the work of Unified Champion Schools, if you're on specialchronicles.com, you can search for inclusive mindset. So search for Unified Champion Schools and hear episodes of this podcast, because over 700, I don't which episode this is, over 770 episodes. You can just go on specialchronicles.com and search and find the episode that you was on. What it might be hard to pick one success story or example, but and for the sake of time, because I think we're at about 43 minutes, maybe can you briefly share one powerful, successful story or example of transformation that has emerged from the coalition's partnerships with nations across the globe? What's one powerful story or example?
Yeah, and this is one of the smaller nations that we have had join the coalition, but the nation of Seychelles. They have a good program. The government's supportive. It was one when we first. This was really great because they joined the coalition, and then there was kind of a okay, what now moment, and they were like, okay, we don't even know. We don't know what to do. We need guidance. Our team, Jackie's team of global youth engagement got in there. The regional office and the local program got in, got together with the Ministry of Education, rolled out our programming, and lo and behold, I think within a year or so, the government of Seychelles, they were so pleased and so impressed by our programming that they now pay for a paid staff member with Special Olympics Seychelles as part of their commitment to the Global Coalition. I think the position is their sports director. I could be wrong on that, so don't hold me to that completely. But the government came in not really knowing what this was that we're doing. They weren't, I don't think, that involved with Special Olympics programming in Seychelles. And now, after being part of the coalition, they themselves decided, we didn't even ask. They themselves said, you know what, we're going to provide, the government's going to pay for staff to help to grow your programming in Seychelles. That's probably one of the first ones that pops to the top of my mind. The country of Malta, I was there with the First Lady, the Prime Minister, the Minister Grima, all sorts of government leadership. I was there at the end of last year leading. They had their national games in Malta. The whole government is behind what we're doing with Special Olympics, inclusive education through sports programming in Malta. They're growing across the country. One of our great global ambassadors, Gilmore Borg, who, again, is one of the reasons that we've been so successful in Malta. Classic example. He is the perfect spokesperson for the coalition. Athletes are always the best spokespeople for the coalition, and we're seeing growth in Malta because of that. So the Seychelles, Malta are a couple of the two that pop to the top of my mind. When I share the link to our page, we have a number of stories about how the coalition is making progress in different nations around the world for people to take a look at.
Awesome. Yeah. So for those of you that are listening in, definitely go check out to hear more of those stories. And I think Tim always talks about how it's an athlete-led organization that us athlete leaders are leading. So just like the story that you showed in Malta, I'm sure in when offline when you get connected with Grace in New Zealand, I'm sure the same thing will happen over there. When we focus on inclusion, and I'm going to combine the next few questions just for the sake of time. We mentioned the focus on inclusion and education a little bit earlier, but the coalition, as you talked about, advocates for inclusive education, and you work with Dr. Jodo and whole youth and education team. Can you talk about the importance of unified schools and how this model is fostering a more cohesive classrooms and communities? And with that, unified sports has been a game changer in promoting social inclusion through sports. In hearing when Tim had premiered his podcast Need a Lift, in which I think that the week that we broadcasted it, when he premiered, I rebroadcasted the Call to Unite episode that he did on mine as a way to share, to invite my listeners to go follow and listen to his. But one of the audio clips on his podcast, there was a student in Hawaii that talked about their moment of lift being at a unified basketball game at his school. And so how does the program work in practice, and what has been the response from schools and communities in unified sports, but then also how talk about the importance of unified schools as a model for fostering inclusive classrooms and communities.
Absolutely. Fantastic. question, Daniel. I think that unified schools and our programming in schools really are the future of Special Olympics, our programming in the United States and globally. Not to say that traditional Special Olympics won't always exist, but I just think that this is such a key to really changing the world we live in. I really do believe it. I think that our world right now is struggling with accepting difference, different points of view, different genders, different all sorts of difference, and I think that we're struggling with that. And one thing that we have seen, and I'm glad I have my notes because I wanted to go to this. We're seeing that when our programming is in a school, we're seeing standardized test scores increase for both students with and without intellectual differences. GPAs increase. Graduation rates increase. We see reading scores are 13% higher for students with intellectual disabilities and 14.5% higher for students without intellectual disabilities. This is when our programming is involved in schools. We hear a lot of stories from teachers that say a new sense of community comes about when we have unified programming in schools. And one thing that I will say, and this is, I hate to use always U.S. examples, but just to give you an idea of what of the view of unified or our inclusive education programming in the United States, where we can't get 51% of Americans to agree on the color of the sky on any given day. But just to say this, we went out and did some research in the U.S. 9 of 10 voters say that what we are doing in inclusive education through sport programming, our UCS programming, is a good investment. 92% of teachers have said they see a reduction in bullying in classes that have our unified programming. 95% see an increase in participation of students, and 89% of teachers are more confident in teaching students with intellectual differences than without our programming. So we're seeing not only in schools, we're seeing results, but we're also seeing the general public who learns about what we do see it as a good thing. They see it as a valuable thing, and they see it as something worth supporting. So I think that, our work in schools, I think is a key, not only to the growth of Special Olympics, our movement, but I think to honestly, and I don't want to sound too bright and ambitious or too overly confident, but in a world that is in desperate need of a different perspective on difference, I think that our programming is critical. I really do.
Yeah,
I really do.
I absolutely agree. And as the coalition grows, because when I was, so I'm in my mid-30s, and when I was growing up, we didn't have unified champion schools. We didn't have a lot of the inclusive education programs that Special Olympics had was not something that my school had, and I've heard from some parents of even some students that currently go to that school that have had similar issues. But as the coalition grows, we don't, as you talked about, we don't just want it to be something that schools and governments aspire to, but something that is tangible and that can bring to reality. So how is the coalition ensuring that inclusive education is not just an aspiration, but a tangible reality at the local level?
Yeah. And the best way we can do that is by having the athletes tell the story. I think that's the best way. And I think, we've seen that with Capitol Hill Day here in the United States and the support we get from the U.S. government for our programming. And it's really because of the voices like yours, Daniel, and the voices of the athletes that come and tell their story. And, I was going to say, I've heard so many times on meetings with members of Congress and whatnot, where one of the members of the delegation from whatever state will say, oh, we didn't have this when I was growing up, but I see what it's done for, the athlete that they're with. And they said, gosh, I wish I'd had it back then. And I think that, that message in one way is heartbreaking. I mean, gosh, I wish we had it back then for everyone. But we're starting to get it. We're growing in the United States, 10,000 schools, but we have 100,000 schools in the U.S. So we have a ways to go here. But the more we can get a foothold, get a start in these countries where we're at now, 20 strong now, hopefully 40 strong by 2028. The more we can get in there, get the programming started, successfully started and delivered, and then have these athletes and teachers and those involved in our programming continue to tell the story, not only to government leaders, but tell the story out in the community, so that members of the community hear what's happening in schools, see the change that's being made in classrooms and throughout the whole fabric of the school. That's how we're going to be able to grow upon what we're just getting started. I mean, to be honest, the coalition is very new. I mean, we're kind of in the infancy of the coalition, and we're just starting, and we're having success. But we have to deliver a product that is really, truly changing schools and changing the experience for our athletes and for both students with and without intellectual disabilities. And once we do that, I'm very confident it's going to continue to grow and grow and grow and be self-sustaining then. Because in the United States, the model is we come in, we have support from the federal government that ends up out in the states. Most of the time, then it becomes self-sustaining and it grows on its own. That's what we want to see globally, is that happening as well.
Awesome. And as it couldn't be possible without partnerships and financial support. So the coalition has seen increasing financial investment in inclusive education. How crucial is funding and supporting these programs? How are you ensuring these investments translate into lasting sustainable change in local communities? And then what role do public-private partnerships play in advancing the mission of the coalition, and how are they creating opportunities for long-term collaboration on the ground so they can be self-sustaining?
Yeah, the public-private partnerships model is very important. A number of the countries that we've gone to, that we've brought forward the idea of the Global Coalition for Inclusion and our inclusive education programming. A lot of the times they do want to see that there is some partnership with, say for instance, like the Stavros Niarchos Foundations or Lions Clubs, or corporate support as well. Largely, I listed the organization or the groups that we're working with now, but we're looking to try to grow that where, say for instance, in Seychelles right now, it's Special Olympics International with the support of Stavros Niarchos and Lions Club and the government. That's what we have right now, but we want to see local corporates and local philanthropic entities join in and start to support this work as well. It's hugely important what we're doing to get the word out. We couldn't do without our support that we're getting from, like I said, SNF, Lions Clubs, Botner, UNFPA, and the other supporters. So we're going to have to continue to grow that. If we want to build, we're looking to get to 40 countries. What is it? I think there's 195 countries or 200 or so countries that the UN recognizes globally. So, 20 is good. 40 will be better. We still have a long ways to go to get to the critical mass globally. So it's going to take support from government, but also from philanthropic entities, from corporates and whatnot, to really continue to grow the model and to reach the number of athletes that we want to reach.
Awesome. I love that. And just like those of us with intellectual differences and a lot of us Special Olympics athletes, we overcome our challenges when we're competing in Special Olympics, when doing all athlete leadership engagements and events. So kind of just like that, I'm sure the coalition has had challenges. So what are some of the biggest challenges that the coalition has faced in advancing systematic change for people with IDD? How have you worked to overcome it? And then how has the coalition measured the success, and what outcomes have you used to evaluate the effectiveness of its programs?
Yeah. No, there definitely is challenges. I would be, we're very proud of the progress we've made, but I wouldn't be telling the truth if I said it's been all roses and no challenges. A couple of things that pop to mind is, we're a very small team doing this out of Special Olympics International. Largely, it's 3 of us that are working on it on my team. Getting support from some of the rest of the team, but we've got a small team in general. There's 5 or 6 of us on our government relations team. Funding for what we do is, it's always a challenge to live within the funding amounts that we have, because when you have a grand vision for reaching every country on the face of the earth, the funding stream doesn't always match what our vision is. So we have to prioritize. We have to, in some cases, we have to put things on the back burner. There's places that we'd like to reach out to. There's countries and parts of the world that would really like to dig into, but we can't. We don't have the manpower. We don't have the funding. So that is a challenge that we've faced. One of the other challenges, and especially from an American perspective, that I've learned over not just the Global Coalition work, but also my nearly 10 years with Special Olympics, we're very well known. Our brand awareness is very high in the United States. Most people have heard of Special Olympics in the US, but if you get outside of the US, even to some of the Western European countries, the awareness of what we are and what we do is not that high. And so, when we go into offices in the United States, go to meet members of Congress or go to the administration or whatnot, they've heard of Special Olympics. Now, they may confuse us with Paralympics. As you know, that's a typical confusion. And we always say we like Paralympics. We're big fans of Paralympics, but we're for athletes with intellectual differences. Paralympics is a different deal, and they're connected to the 5-ring Olympics, and that's great. And we love what they're doing, but we're different. So we have that challenge even in the U.S., but then you get outside of the U.S. and then there have been places where we've gone where they've never heard of Special Olympics when we're pitching the Global Coalition to them. So getting that awareness is one of the first things we have to do. And then once they're aware of what we do, we have to get them to believe that, hey, what we're doing is important. What we're doing isn't just sports out in a field. It's bigger than that. It's inclusion. It's our education work. It's our, and the coalition isn't working on our healthcare providing, but also there's that, we provide screenings for people with intellectual disabilities that other organizations don't, that other governments don't. So I'd say a couple of the 2 biggest challenges I've seen is one, having the manpower and the resources here to carry out the project, and then 2, the awareness piece. Whereas we go outside the borders of the United States, and often the awareness of what Special Olympics is and what we do isn't always that great. One of the things that's helping us is World Games. Having the World Games in Berlin, having the World Games in the UAE, having the games in Turin. Now coming up in Latin America will be the first time we have World Games coming up in 2027 in Santiago, Chile. This just helps to broaden the awareness of what we are and what we do. And once people know what we are and what we do, it makes it easier for us to come in and say, hey, you've heard of Special Olympics now, you have a positive feeling about it, but here's what else we do, and we want your partnership in doing it. And so getting to that point is sometimes challenging, but, one by one, country by country, region by region, we're starting to break through. And I think that we're getting to a point, again, I spoke to earlier, this country joins a coalition and starts doing something, then a country, next door or a couple countries over goes, hey, look what they're doing over there. We need to learn more about this. And so hopefully that's going to help us continue to grow and meet our goals of, the 150,000 schools, 2 million athletes, $20 million worth of commitments globally. Hopefully the awareness will get us to that point sooner rather than later, because I don't want a whole nother generation of people saying in these meetings, gosh, I wish we had that when I was growing up. We want to get it now, or as close to now as possible. We know we're not going to get there overnight, but with you, Daniel, your voice, Special Chronicles, telling the story, athletes, throughout the world talking about it with their governments, with leaders, corporates, whatnot. We think we're going to get there, hopefully sooner than later.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm so excited for our listeners to hear this conversation, and if you're listening, please share this episode with your, you can easily share it on your social media, text it or email it to your friends, so more people can hear about the powerful, impactful work that Shawn and you and your team with the Global Coalition is doing across the globe. I'm going to take one final sponsor break, and then because we've got just a few minutes left in our program today, and then we'll look ahead to the future and get some final thoughts after this final break here. To let you know that support for Special Chronicles comes from the ComEd Energy Force Ambassador Program, the country's first energy and solar efficiency education program designed for, taught by people with disabilities. Learn more at specialchronicles.com/ComEd. That's specialchronicles.com/ComEd. And this episode is brought to you by United Airlines Bridge Disability Business Resource Group, connecting people of all abilities, including hiring Special Olympics athletes like myself as employees. I believe 18 athletes and growing. You can learn more on United's commitment to disability inclusion for employment and travel at specialchronicles.com/United, at specialchronicles.com/United. And with that, as we look ahead to the future, as the coalition continues to grow, what are some of the next steps or future plans that you're most excited about? How do you see the impact that the coalition is evolving over the next 5 to 10 years? I'm hoping I could bring this podcast to Santiago, Chile, because I think it'll be important to not only highlight those stories, but even the global coalition. But what are the next step, future plans, and then how can individuals and organizations get involved to support the work of the Special Olympics Global Coalition for Inclusion?
Yeah, well, thank you again, Daniel. I just want to say thank you for providing this opportunity, this platform to talk about the Global Coalition. This is one of the ways that we'll be able to grow the coalition, is to get the word out, and thank you so much for that opportunity. We have a number of things planned over the course of the next through 2028. We are going to shortly start working on our 2-year report on where we came from and where we're at. This is something that the Stavros Niarchos Foundation has provided us funding to do. That's one thing that I think is going to be a great tool to use as we go forward, approaching new governments. We'll be able to talk about our success stories and whatnot. We're going to have a number of continued convenings. Where we did the convening just recently at the Turin Games. We spoke about the coalition at the Global Disability Summit just last week in Berlin. We're looking to have another convening of the coalition later this year, potentially at COSP or UNGA at the UN General Assembly, or the Convention on State Parties to the, I always get confused on COSP, but it's the state parties on the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. That gathering, we're looking to amplify the coalition there. And then obviously we'll be doing a large event around the coalition in Santiago, Chile, at the World Games. Would love to have your involvement in that, Daniel, in whatever way we can do it. We're going to do a first ever Capitol Hill Day event in Brussels at the European Union, which is what we will be talking about the Global Coalition and what we're doing there. We're looking at probably doing that in June. We're going to do a workshop, hopefully after June or July, in the MENA region, Middle East, North Africa region, where we're going to bring together all of the countries that are interested in the Global Coalition, their programs, to talk about how we can go out to the countries to gain their support for the coalition. So we've got a pretty full agenda for the next year. And then on out until the games in Santiago, Chile. And then, of course, by 2028, we hope to be up to 40 countries, at least 40 countries in the coalition by 2028. So yeah, we've got a full agenda, and we'd love to have you involved in any way you can.
Yeah, so awesome. We'll have to just like I at the to kick off this series, I had Lou, I'm the chief of sporting competition, and just like I mentioned with him, we'll have to talk off air. My dad's the business manager for Special Chronicles, so we'll have to talk off air. I was hoping to make it to Italy, but because just like what I did in Los Angeles, I produce a daily podcast series. So, but for these World Winter Games, that sponsorship had fell through. That
happens.
That happens. So, but we'll have to talk off air about Santiago, Chile.
We will.
And so, before we get to the final question, what message would you like to share with our listeners who are passionate about making a difference for individuals with intellectual and developmental differences? And do you have any, and then follow that up with any final thoughts on your overall time here today on the Special Chronicles podcast?
Yeah, great. Thank you. One thing is, outside of the work of the Global Coalition, I think we're in unsettled times right now. Globally. And here in the US, there's a lot of changes happening. We're seeing, people are worried about, is the Department of Education going to go away? Is Special Olympics funding going to continue? That transfers outside of the US. A lot of times what happens in the US it's the first step in it going beyond our borders. The thing I would say is stay in the fight, stay involved. Stay engaged. I know that there are a lot of things that are concerning to people right now, but the best thing we can do is stick together, keep getting the message out, keep talking about the successes that our athletes are having, not just as part of a unified school or on the field of play, but our athletes are doing amazing things across the board. Keep telling those stories. Keep coming on your podcast and talking about the special things that our athletes have been doing that are making our world better. And not just for people with intellectual differences, but for people without intellectual differences too. I think that's one of the most beautiful things I see that has come out of our unified schools work is how this isn't just something that's benefiting Special Olympics athletes. It's benefiting everyone. And we need to keep telling that story again and again and again, and virtually to anyone who will listen, because you never know who you're talking to. They might be the next huge financial supporter, or might know somebody who knows somebody that will tweet out something on or X out. I don't even know what you call it. X out a message that will get to millions of people, that will get people involved. Stay in the fight. Keep talking about what we're doing. Stick together. And that's not just here in the U.S. or part of the Global Coalition, but across the board. I think that if we stick together and people of goodwill will support what we're doing and join arms with us to advance the cause of inclusion for everyone. And so I think that would be my message. And again, your this platform, Daniel, is hugely important I'm so honored to be here and to have gotten the opportunity to speak about the Special Olympics Global Coalition for Inclusion, but also what we do with government here in the U.S. and across the board. This has given me an opportunity to talk about this, to get the word out, and thank you for doing that, and please keep doing it.
Awesome.
That's what I really could say at the close here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always empowering to be able to talk with many people in the community, many people in this movement, and hear those stories. And I've heard from many listeners how it impacted they all from joining. One listener I heard from who lives actually nearby me, but I actually met her the first time during one of my Special Olympics basketball games, and then I found out that she volunteered at the games in Berlin, and so
Cool.
it's impactful to kind of hear so many impactful stories.
And it's a small world too. It's amazing how small the world gets when we start talking to each other.
Yeah, it is. So we got one final question, but we've got a bumper, so let's go ahead and play that bumper to introduce the final question.
We're not just athletes.
We are the ambassadors of an uprising.
Peaceful protesters.
In a rebellion against anyone
Who has a fear of difference.
Difference.
Our demands are
Equality.
equality,
dignity, and the recognition of our
Shared humanity. We will not stop.
or accept anything less.
Today, our world is
More divided than ever.
And coming together has never been more urgent.
The revolution.
is inclusion.
Find out more at jointherevolution.org.
So ever since I attended the 2019 World Games in Abu Dhabi, I've been concluding with one final question, because as you know, the inclusion revolution is a big part of this movement, and of course we want our listeners to listen to this podcast. But the bigger part, we want to leave our listeners with a call to action to bring inclusion into the communities, bring inclusion into society, into their schools, into their workplaces, and this question will help our listeners to one of these days. I'll have to go back on a number of these podcast episodes, and I think it'll be neat to do an episode where we edit out the answers to what inclusion means, like a whole episode that talks about what inclusion. I think that'll be right. an exciting episode to do, because some people might have a similar answer, but everybody has a unique, just like we're all different, and everybody has a unique answer. So I'll ask you've probably heard Tim and other colleagues answer this question, but I'll ask you as well. What does inclusion mean to you?
That's I think it's a key question of the times we live in right now. And inclusion to me is we don't leave anyone behind because of any difference. We're rich, poor, men, women, different colors, different abilities, that we don't leave anyone behind anymore. And I think that, if our society across the globe found a way to do that, I think that would be true inclusion. I mean, we all have differences, but we're all more the same than we're different. Yeah. And I've said that in political conversations, we're more the same than we're different. And we need to start to remember that. And we need to start to bring everyone along. To me, that would be true inclusion, if we leave no one behind anymore.
Absolutely. I love that. That's a perfect final message to conclude this episode on. That what you said reminded me of you've probably met David Egan, who's also a former Southern Survivor Global Messenger, who wrote a book with his mom, more alike than different, right? I think that kind of, and when my girlfriend and I went out to the plane pull in Virginia, David was there, but also I've seen David actually spoke at my Southern Tribal Global Messenger Training. But yeah, that question, and then David's book speaks to how you define inclusion. But then also a quote that my mom said that I think some staff at SOI that told me one time that they've used this quote that my mom said after my mom both saw me competing in Special Olympics at our local level. She said, if the whole world were like Special Olympics, then there would be no worlds. And I think that also kind of also ties into your definition of inclusion.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And also David Egan, his mother, Kathleen, love them. They're great people. They are brilliant messengers of inclusion.
They are, yeah. One of these days, I've got to have them both on the program. One of these days we'll make it happen.
That's a powerhouse combo there. That's a powerhouse show.
It is. So for a few final plugs for all of you listening in, you can shop our merchandise store, our Disabled Voices Matter merch. We have t-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs. 60% of the profits will go back to support Special Chronicles. You can shop now at specialchronicles.com/shop. And then tap that follow button so you don't miss a new episode, or go back and listen to previous episodes of this series. I have to look up on my notes here. You can go back on this series and hear from the Chief of Sport and Competition at SOI, hear from Southern Tribal Global Messenger Grace, and then hear from a few athletes who competed in alpine skiing, snowshoeing, dance sport, hear from a coach. You can also hear from about a few people who were at the Global Youth Leadership Summit. And then coming up on this series, after this episode with Shawn, you can look forward to hear from Carly and John from United Airlines, a big global partner, and then hear from a volunteer, Jenny Fortner, who's on the board, who I forgot. I made a note and I forgot to mention another event that we were both at, and actually Jenny was also, we were all sitting at a table at a White House event in December 2024. So that was exciting to sit across from you.
And Jenny's so wonderful. Jenny Fortner is wonderful. She's the best.
She is. Yeah, I've known her for many years because she's been on the board of our local program, and so it was exciting to see that she's making an impact on the international level. Awesome. So thanks again for. I know we've gone an hour and 20 minutes, but. Thank you again for it's been a joy and a lot of fun talking to you, Shawn. Thank you for coming on the Special Chronicles podcast.
I loved it, Daniel. Thanks so much. I'm honored to be on. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the coalition, and we'll love to do it again anytime you want. And can't wait till I cross paths with you. Hopefully, coming through Chicago one of these days.
Yes, absolutely. You have to drop me a text when you're coming through. And folks, I'm listening. Stay tuned. Keep following. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, so you don't miss a new episode. And until then, we maybe we could say choose to include at the same time. Until then, choose to include.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Special Chronicles podcast. Our podcast was produced by Daniel Smrokowski on the Special Chronicles Network. Follow Special Chronicles on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Subscribe, rate, and review Special Chronicles on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Our website, specialchronicles.com, where you can stream our archives of over 500 episodes absolutely for free. Also, there's a list of our favorites, original series, award-winning columns, and blogs. And sign up for our newsletter to receive exclusive bonus content delivered to your inbox. Again, specialchronicles.com. Special Chronicles is hosted by Podbean Podcast Hosting. Our live streams are powered by StreamYard. Thanks, as always, to our business manager, Adam Smrokowski, who always encourages us to never give up. I'm Daniel Smrokowski, back next week with more stories.
Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to to people with special needs.